you, folks. How are we doing? Good, I hope. I am in the chaotic rush that is spring and summer and fall. I guess winter's my only downtime when I'm not like out there hard going after plant allies, because I only make tinctures with fresh plant matter, so I've got to be out here getting her while she's fresh and alive and awake and doing her thing. And so today I'm going to show you how to make a yarrow tincture. You might have checked out my video, meeting yarrow in the wild. Woo! There was a spider on me. I knew I felt something. But if you haven't, go have that video. Go look at that video. Go have a look-see. That didn't come out smoothly at all, did it? That's okay. That's okay. I'm a human. You know, I'm not a perfect robot. So, yarrow tincture. Now, a lot of people will say, I only use the yarrow bloom, or I only use the yarrow leaf. I find the yarrow leaf to be more effective, or the yarrow bloom to be more effective for this and this and this. Now, I'm not saying that those things can't be true, but here's the deal. If you are to the stage of gathering yarrow where she's in bloom, and you cut off just the bloom, that's kind of mean. Because if there's not more blooms left behind or that are readying to bloom, the rest of the plant is going to die. She'll come back because she comes back from root every year. But you might as well, if there's only, let's see, if there's only one bloom on the top, you might as well cut the whole thing down to the base. And I like balanced medicine. So if you find that this is good for that, or that's good for this, why not snip it here and make it good for all? So I definitely, when I harvest the yarrow, if there's not enough to where, like if there's no new bloom coming here, I will cut her down right here. Now in the spring, sometimes you get these big lush mats of just yarrow leaf. That's different. I actually like to use just the leaf more specifically for like external stuff, say like an oil infusion. And I really like to use the bloom and the leaf together to make a tincture, as she's definitely got let me take a breath here. She's got she's got higher volatile oil levels in her blooms. And now you're like, wait a minute, aren't you against volatile oils? No, I'm only against them when they've been adulterated into what is known as essential oils, which is really just volatile oils concentrated. So when she's in her natural state, which is parts per million, she's good to go. And so this is easy. This is so easy. And now yarrow is really amazing for things like bladder infection, too heavy of bleeding. She's very specific, like heavy of like moontime bleeding. She's very specific for our blood. Like she likes to stop blood. She likes to start blood. You're like, start blood? Well, let's say you're like 4 or 5 days late from your period, and it's not because you're pregnant. I want to emphasize that. Not because you're pregnant. She won't give you an abortion. Shouldn't take her while you're pregnant, but she's not gonna give you an abortion. So like if you're late from like stress or just, you know, your cycle is just off whack and you really feel like you need to bleed, you know what I mean. Like that hormonal feeling where you're like, oh my god, I just need to bleed already. And then, you know, so you can use yarrow tincture to bring on bleeding. Although, I feel like in some instances the tea works better to do that. But, like, she's great for stopping bleeding. Like, for example, my daughter gets nosebleeds now and then. And when they get going, they really get going. So what she does is when her nose starts bleeding, and she's 11 years old, is she runs to the cupboard, she grabs a yarrow tincture, she takes about half dropper full. If you're an adult, you might want to try a whole dropper full, but she'll do that a couple times. First time usually gets it to stop. First time with a cold rag on her neck and just, you know, remaining calm, usually gets it to stop. But if it doesn't, she'll take another half dropper full. And she's really, really cool at that, stopping excessive bleeding. So on that note, if you are like bleeding really heavily from your period, she can slow that down too. But she's also pretty freaking amazing for bladder infections, you know, UTIs, and kidney health. Oh, and she can lower a fever. Oh, and she can keep colds away, and she's good for sinus infections, and she's good for externally. She can help heal up wounds. Yarrow is the type of plant ally that I think every person should have in their house, especially if you have kids. You know, oh, got a raging fever, we can stop that. Trying to fight a cold, we can stop that. Got a really nasty bug bite or a wound, you can even put that tincture right on there. It'll stop the itching, or it'll stop the wound. Her name even comes from ancient story of Achilles, where the mom dipped the baby in yarrow so he couldn't be wounded, but where she held him on his heel, you know, the Achilles heel. But a lot of that comes from folklore, from the fact that she grows over in that area, Rome type area. She's native to here too. She's native to a lot of countries, so you can find her pretty easily. But soldiers were getting stabbed, you know? And so they, you know, the physicians and stuff and the herbalists would take yarrow and make a paste and shove it in the wound. Not only did it stop bleeding, but it also stopped infection, because one really cool thing about yarrow is that on contact she kills all gram-positive bacteria. So she's just really awesome to have. Now, some people will tell you that yarrow tincture used internally will cause sun sensitivity. That is and isn't true in my opinion. It is true if you're making a tincture with dried plant matter. It isn't true if you're making a tincture with fresh plant matter. Look at me. I am as white as my Irish traveler father. I did not take after my mother at all. I burn really easily, but I would burn, if that was true, the amount of yarrow tincture I take, I would just I would self-combust, you know. But I don't burn like some people say, like even like touching her you'll burn. Basically, like if you're harvesting yarrow in the wild, you will start to burn on your hands from being in the sun. And I have never had that occur, and I gather tons of yarrow. I've never seen that occur with anybody that I gather yarrow with. I feel like it's kind of just the stigma she's gotten. But I'm not saying it doesn't happen to some people. I'm just saying that it primarily happens when you're making tinctures out of dried plant matter, which I don't advocate for anyhow, because there are constitutes in her when she's alive and fresh that we need to balance out the other volatile parts of her, you know. So we're just going to take our yarrow and we're going to chop it up into a jar. Try to pick a jar that you, for the most part, will fill all the way. So if you've only got a little bit of yarrow, use a little jar. If you've got a lot of yarrow, use a big jar. And then now we're going to take 100 proof vodka. And again, I use 100 proof vodka because 100 proof means 50% alcohol, 50% water. So that means she's already even. She's already good to go, meaning there's no complicated math here. There's no figuring out how much water you need to add after you've made the tincture to make this tincture safe to take, because we are starting off with something safe to take. A lot of herbalist books are going to tell you that you need to use grain alcohol, which is crazy, crazy high, dangerous poison for you proof. And when they tell you to do that, they have to tell you all these other 1-to-1 ratios, this to that ratio. You got to be doing this math because it's poison. It's poison. And honestly, I believe that if you're going to have a reaction to a plant ally, no matter how safe and simple she is, it's going to be when you use either dried plant matter or really high proof alcohol. Because like with the 100 proof vodka, we've got the water-based properties, water soluble properties, and the alcohol soluble properties. When you're using an alcohol that basically has no water content, you are only getting the alcohol soluble properties, so it's like not balanced. And in some ways it's stronger. You're like, isn't stronger better? Not in this regard, because then it's more stronger like a pharmaceutical. You know, we want balance. When you're working with plant as medicine, you want a balance. You don't want the strongest thing, because we're not trying to make this a pharmaceutical, and people damage themselves and hurt others when they try to make it into a pharmaceutical, in my opinion. So You're going to want to make sure that you fill it pretty much all the way to the top, because if you leave air in this, you'll get what's called oxidation. Make your tincture go brown, and she's not quite as potent, and just fill it to the top. And that's another reason it's important to pick a jar that you can fill up all the way. So all I did was chop her up, pour some vodka over her. Now I'm going to make a label, and you guys will see me talk about these a lot. I make my own labels. I use just these like Avery shipping labels. They're pretty cheap at any basically big box store, and I think once you buy them you get free access to their label maker. But you can just use masking tape too. You could use a Sharpie and just write on the top of the lid, although I prefer writing on something that's, I don't know, not smudgeable in that regard, because sometimes the alcohol, you know, you can use alcohol to get Sharpie off of metal. So you don't have to make it as complicated as I do. I just have to make batch numbers. So I check that it's a tincture, I check that it's wildcrafted, I put my date on here, I write what's in it. I write the name of it, which is kind of redundant, but it's how I have to do it to make a batch number, have records and stuff. And then I write where I get it from. It's always good to know where you've gotten your medicine from. You might remember, but like, I can't multitask apparently. Because like, let's say you're like, okay, I got this yarrow from a wildlife preserve in our area. Hiked way in there and got what I needed. And then let's say that I'm like, wow, that yarrow made like really potent tincture compared to the yarrow that I got from maybe up on the mountain where I usually get a lot of yarrow. And like they might have like different constitutes. Like they're the same plant, but environment really affects plants. So like you can be like, I really think that yarrow on the mountain helps with fever really well. And the yarrow from the nature preserve really helped me stop bleeding more than the one in the mountain. Right, and so like you can be like, that's that one. And then plus like if something does go wrong, you need to know where you got that plant from. You know, environmental reasons or whatever. So now that I've put my label on there and I know where I got her from, I'm just going to sit her in a cool dark place for 6 to 8 weeks. If you forget about it and it's been like a year or more, don't freak out. Tinctures don't go bad. In fact, you're more likely to have your lid go bad than you are the tincture to go bad, because it's vodka. Now, if you are using like glycerin, like glycerite, to make a tincture, I always say that wrong. I'm aware. I don't use it because it's basically an oil that people make tinctures with so they can make an alcohol-free tincture. It's not a tincture. It's more like an oil infusion, and it's really not as potent, and they go bad really quickly. I'm talking like 6 months max, and sometimes they can go rancid quicker than that. So you're like, but I don't use alcohol. I don't want alcohol in my body. What about our livers, our liver? What about our kidneys? This is going to hurt our body. Can you eat a ripe banana? If you can eat a ripe banana, like if you will like willingly like eat that banana that's got a few spots on it, doesn't taste bad, a little mushy, kind of tastes a little boozy. You're eating that ripe banana, you can handle taking a few drops of tincture. There's more alcohol content in a ripe banana than in the average dose of a tincture. And honestly, if your body can't handle 4 to 5 drops, say, of a tincture, you should not be using a lot of things, you know, like ripe bananas. Any fruit really. Shouldn't be drinking kombucha, shouldn't be drinking kefir, shouldn't be having any fermented food, shouldn't be using mouthwash, shouldn't be using, there's alcohol in a lot of things. And so I think people get pretty fearful of it. Now, some people are like, well, but I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have not found it in my experience that alcoholics get triggered by taking a tincture, primarily because of the fact that you're not using it in the same way as like if you'd be drinking this vodka. But last resort, you really don't want to be ingesting any alcohol. I get it. That's your choice. Get yourself a hot cup of water. Not crazy hot, but a little warmer than lukewarm, and put your tincture dose in it. Let it sit for an hour. All the alcohol will evaporate off. So that's a way to use an alcohol-based tincture with definitely not ingesting any alcohol whatsoever. So you are smart enough to do this. You can go out and find Yarrow and make your own tincture. I have faith in you. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars on courses to learn how to do this stuff. You just have to get curious. You just have to take advantage of the age we live in, where every amount of information you could ever want is free. You just have to look for it. So if you like my videos and hearing me, you know, rant about stuff, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Turn on notifications so you know when I upload a new video, because I don't always talk about them on Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, come find me on Instagram. Head to the link in my bio here and come see what I'm all about over there. Find my website. Oh, and comment and like so that I know that you're here with me and it helps other people find me. Okay? So I will see you next time, and I promise there's going to be a ton more tincture videos before the summer's over and all kinds of other stuff. So I will see you, alright? Bye!